Close your eyes and drift with me. The present fades. The hum of electricity. The noise of machines. The restless motion of our world. All of it dissolves into silence. Now, imagine the year is 1861. The United States is not yet a century old. Its borders stretch wide. Its towns are raw and growing. Its forests deep. Its railroads reaching further with every year. But beneath this surface of growth lies fracture. A great crack running across the land. Invisible on maps. Yet etched deep into the soul of the nation. That crack is slavery. For nearly 2.5 centuries, men and women have lived in bondage in America. They were bought and sold at auction. Their bodies treated as property. Their labor stolen. Their families torn apart. And yet, this same land speaks endlessly of liberty, of freedom, of democracy, of human rights. A contradiction so vast that the nation could not contain it forever. And so, as the sun rose over Charleston Harbor, on a spring morning in April of 1861, the first cannon fire echoed across the water. Fort Sumter shook beneath the bombardment. Smoke rose. And with it began a war that would take more American lives than any other conflict in its history. Why? Why did it happen? Why did a people who called themselves brothers, sharing the same flag, the same faith, the same language, turn rifles and bayonets against one another? Was it politics? Was it pride? Was it the clash of two economic systems? Or was it something deeper? Something that could never have been avoided? Let us walk slowly now through the shadows of the past. Let us listen, not to the textbooks, but to the whispers of history itself. For the Civil War was not only a matter of battles and generals. It was the reckoning of a nation with its soul. To understand the war, we must go back. Not to 1861. Not even to the election of Abraham Lincoln. We must return much further. To a different America. The year is 1619. A ship approaches the shores of Virginia. Its sails weathered. Its timbers creaking. Its hold carrying a cargo unlike any other. Inside are human beings. They do not arrive willingly. They are not settlers seeking opportunity. They are captives, torn from Africa, dragged across the Atlantic in darkness, chained in the bowels of a ship, many never surviving the journey. These survivors step onto Virginia's soil, and with their arrival, the first seeds of America's greatest contradiction are planted. For here is the paradox. A land that will come to define itself by freedom is built, from its very beginning, on bondage. Through the 17th and 18th centuries, slavery takes root and spreads. First in tobacco, then in rice, and eventually in cotton. The crop that would transform the South into a kingdom of wealth for the few, and a prison of suffering for the many. By the dawn of the 19th century, millions of men, women, and children are enslaved. They live under the lash. They labor from dawn until dusk. Their songs, rich with sorrow and faith, float across the fields, a haunting reminder that beneath the economy of prosperity are lives held captive. And yet, while slavery deepens, a new voice grows louder in America. The voice of liberty, the cry of revolution, the founder's right of freedom, of independence, of the rights of man. All men are created equal, Thomas Jefferson declares. And even as he writes those words, enslaved workers labor in his fields. Hypocrisy, contradiction, or a wound that could not be ignored forever. The truth is this: America was born in paradox. And from that paradox, a shadow spread, darker and darker, until, one day, it consumed the land in fire. The United States grows. Its borders push westward. Its people spill across mountains and rivers. Its towns multiply like seeds carried on the wind. But with growth, comes tension. For every new territory, every new state, forces the nation to ask the same haunting question. Will it be free? Or will it be slave? In the early 1800s, this question becomes unavoidable. It is not only a question of morality, but of power. The South, with its cotton fields and plantations, depends on enslaved labor. Its economy, its culture, its very identity, are bound to it. The North, meanwhile, is changing. Factories rise. Cities expand. Immigrants arrive in great waves. Its economy grows from industry, commerce, and free labor. Two visions of America, living under one flag. Two destinies, bound uneasily together. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 draws an imaginary line across the land. Above it, slavery is forbidden. Below it, permitted. But lines on maps cannot contain human struggle. They are fragile threads, temporary agreements, doomed to fray. In 1850, another compromise emerges. California enters as free. But in return, a new fugitive slave law demands that Northerners aid in the capture of escaped slaves. And suddenly, the North cannot look away. Picture this. A family in Ohio, their home lit by a single lamp, hiding a runaway in their cellar. The knock at the door. The threat of imprisonment. The law itself demanding that they betray the desperate soul they tried to shelter. The contradiction grows sharper. The line between North and South deepens. Not only in politics, but in conscience. The South fears encirclement, its way of life under siege. The North grows restless, haunted by the moral poison of slavery. The divide is no longer only geographical. It is cultural. It is moral. It is spiritual. A tectonic plate beneath the nation. Grinding, straining. Waiting for the earthquake to come. In every age of fracture, there rise voices. Some cry for peace. Some cry for patience. And some cry for fire. The 1830s, 40s, and 50s are an age of voices. They thunder in pulpits, in newspapers, in crowded halls, in whispered stories passed from one enslaved person to another. William Lloyd Garrison, a radical abolitionist. His newspaper The Liberator, a torch against the darkness. He writes not for gradual change, but for immediate, uncompromising freedom. I will not retreat a single inch, he declares. And I will be heard. Frederick Douglass. Once enslaved, he escaped to freedom, taught himself to read and write. And now, with words sharp as steel, he reveals the truth of bondage to the North. He tells them of the whip, the hunger, the families torn apart. He tells them slavery is not an abstract institution. It is pain. And his voice carries the weight of lived truth. And then, John Brown. Wild-eyed, fierce, unyielding. He believes slavery is a sin so great that only blood can wash it away. At Harper's Ferry, he leads men into battle, hoping to ignite a rebellion of the enslaved. The raid fails. Brown is captured. He is hanged. But at the gallows, he speaks calmly. I am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood. The South shudders in fear. The North shudders in awe. And the divide grows sharper still. Even in the pulpits of America's churches, voices clash. Preachers in the South defend slavery as biblical, ordained, the natural order of God. Preachers in the North thunder against it, condemning it as sin, a curse upon the land. And so, in sermons and newspapers, in speeches and whispers, the nation argues with itself. The fire spreads. The prophets speak. The people listen. And the canyon between North and South grows deeper, darker, more perilous. The year is 1860. America is restless. The land trembles beneath invisible strain. In taverns, in parlors, in farms and factories, people whisper of politics, of the fate of the Union, of what the next election may bring. For decades, fragile compromises have held the nation together. But each compromise has been weaker than the last. A brittle thread stretched over a widening chasm. And now, the election arrives. Among the candidates is a tall, gaunt lawyer from Illinois. His face is worn, his manner humble, his voice deliberate. Abraham Lincoln. He does not call for the sudden abolition of slavery. He does not demand the immediate upheaval of the Southern order. But he believes this: that slavery must not spread, that it must be contained, kept from expanding into the vast new territories of the West. To the South, this belief is more dangerous than open abolition. For if slavery cannot spread, then over time, it will wither. And if it withers, so too will their wealth, their power, their way of life. So when Lincoln wins the presidency, without a single Southern state in his column, the South does not wait. In Charleston, church bells toll an alarm. In Mississippi, politicians gather in heated chambers. In Alabama, fiery speeches ignite crowds. The conclusion is swift. If Lincoln governs, the South believes its world will die. And so, they decide to leave. One by one, the states fall away. South Carolina first. Then Mississippi. Then Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas. By February of 1861, 7 states have seceded. They form a new nation, the Confederate States of America. They raise a new flag. They write a new constitution. And at its core, they enshrine slavery. Not as an unfortunate necessity, but as the very foundation of their new order. The Union shudders. The North watches in disbelief. And Abraham Lincoln, not yet even sworn into office, inherits a nation already breaking apart. Pause here. Let us ask the question carefully. Could war have been avoided? Some, even today, suggest it could. That one more compromise, one more delicate balancing act, might have preserved peace. But peace at what cost? Slavery was not a wound that could be healed with gentle words. It was not an argument that could be settled with handshakes in Congress. It was a fire. It burned through families, through fields, through generations. It consumed not only the enslaved, but the enslavers, who built their entire world upon it. The South seceded not merely for tariffs, nor only for political power. It seceded to preserve slavery. Its leaders said so, plainly, in speeches, in documents, in their very secession declarations. And the North, though divided in motive, could not allow the Union to dissolve. For if a state could leave simply by choice, the United States would not be a nation at all. It would be a collection of fragments, forever breaking, forever splintering. So war came. Not by accident, not by misunderstanding, but by inevitability. Slavery and freedom could not live side by side forever. One would die, or the other would. And so, The nation marched toward blood. Charleston Harbor. April 12, 1861. The sky is still dark. The sea is quiet. Inside Fort Sumter, Union soldiers wait uneasily. Low on food. Cut off from supply. On the shore, Confederate guns line the harbor. Their barrels point like accusing fingers toward the fort in the bay. The order is given. A signal shell arcs into the sky. Its trail a fiery streak across the dawn. And then, thunder. Cannon after cannon roars. The fort shudders under the assault. Brick and stone crumble. Smoke thickens. The echo rolls across the water. Through the streets of Charleston. Into the ears of a waiting nation. The first shots of the Civil War. No one dies in the bombardment. But something greater dies that morning. The illusion that peace is still possible. The Union rallies. The Confederacy steels itself. And the land prepares for war. A war of brother against brother. Neighbor against neighbor. One nation. Split in two. The cannons at Fort Sumter have barely fallen silent. The smoke still drifts across Charleston Harbor. But already, the nation is changing shape. Men hurry to enlist. Young, untested. Filled with excitement and dread. Farm boys, clerks, teachers, factory workers. All exchange their plows and pens for muskets. In the North, long lines form at recruiting offices. Some march proudly, believing the war will be over in a matter of months. Others walk quietly, knowing in their hearts that war is never so simple. In the South, volunteers swarm to defend their new Confederacy. They march under banners of state pride, convinced they fight not merely for slavery, but for their homes, their honor, their independence. The air is heavy with a strange intoxication. War fever grips the people, and few yet understand the suffering that lies ahead. The summer of 1861. Washington, D.C. buzzes with restless energy. Politicians, journalists, and curious citizens alike clamor to see a real battle. Confident Union troops march toward Manassas, Virginia. They believe the rebels will scatter like dust. That one decisive clash will bring the rebellion to its knees. Families pack picnic baskets. Spectators follow the army, as if war were a play to be watched, not a storm to be endured. But on the fields near Bull Run, reality strikes. Union troops meet fierce resistance. The battle swells into chaos. Gunfire cracks. Smoke thickens. Men stumble in terror. Confederate General Thomas Jackson stands firm with his brigade. There is Jackson, standing like a stone wall. Someone shouts. And from that day, he is known as Stonewall Jackson. The Union Army breaks. Panic spreads. Soldiers retreat, colliding with the carriages of horrified spectators. The road to Washington becomes a river of fear. The illusion of a quick war dies at Bull Run. The North realizes, this will not be easy. This will not be short. This will not be clean. Spring, 1862. In Tennessee, near a small church called Shiloh, two armies collide. The morning mist is thick. Birdsong fills the air. But suddenly, Confederates launch a surprise attack. Union camps erupt in chaos. Men are bayoneted in their tents. The ground, once soft with dew, is torn with musket fire. The battle rages for 2 days. The air is thick with screams, with smoke, with the smell of blood and gunpowder. When it ends, over 23,000 men are dead, wounded, or missing. The fields of Shiloh are strewn with bodies. The peach orchard, once blooming, is soaked in crimson. A Union soldier writes, "I never was in a battle before. But I never want to be in another. I never want to hear another gun fired." Shiloh is a revelation. This war will be longer, bloodier, more merciless than anyone had dared imagine. Across the land, the war expands like wildfire. On the seas, ironclad ships clash in strange, thunderous duels. On the rivers, gunboats seize vital arteries of supply. The Mississippi becomes a highway of conquest. The Western Territories, the border states, the very heart of the continent, all become battlefields. Families are torn in two. Fathers fight against sons. Brothers take opposite sides. The line of division is not only on the map. It runs through the very blood of families. In every town, the drums of war beat louder. The flags wave higher. And beneath it all, the graves multiply. The Civil War was not fought only on battlefields. It seeped into kitchens, barns, fields, and cradles. It haunted the quiet spaces of daily life. To understand why the war truly mattered, we must listen not only to generals and politicians, but to those who bore the weight in silence. Imagine a young soldier, his boots caked in mud, his uniform fraying at the seams. He carries not only a musket, but a pack heavy with biscuits, letters from home, and fear. At night, he lies on the frozen ground, watching the stars. His breath drifts into the cold air. He wonders if he will see another dawn. Letters become lifelines. Soldiers write to mothers, to wives, to children. They speak of aching feet, of hunger, of loneliness. But between the lines lies something unspoken. The dread of not returning. Disease is a greater enemy than the bullet. Camp fever, dysentery, typhoid and pneumonia sweep through the tents. More men die from sickness than from cannon fire. Every cough is a reminder. The body is fragile. The war is merciless. Back home, women step into new roles. They till the soil. They run shops. They manage plantations. They write letters by candlelight, waiting for news that never comes. Some disguise themselves as men, binding their chests, cutting their hair, marching to battle under false names. Others serve as nurses. Clara Barton, the angel of the battlefield, moves among the wounded, binding shattered limbs, offering water, listening to whispered last words. The smell of blood and chloroform fills the air. Women wash bandages black with gore. They hold trembling hands and pray silently. For them, the war is not distant. It is immediate, urgent, relentless. And then, there are the enslaved. 4 million people, caught between two armies. For them, the war is both terror and hope. Some flee plantations, risking capture. Dogs, whips, and worse. They follow the blue uniforms of Union soldiers, seeking freedom in the chaos of war. Others are forced to labor for the Confederacy, building fortifications, hauling supplies, digging trenches. But gradually, the tide shifts. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 transforms the war's meaning. Now, freedom itself is on the battlefield. Black men enlist. They march in Union blue. They fight at places like Fort Wagner, proving their courage, their dignity, their right to claim the liberty long denied. Their voices rise in spirituals, haunting songs of sorrow and deliverance. Songs that echo across the fields, like prayers turned into battle cries. And always, there is the waiting. A mother stares at an empty chair by the fire. A child clutches a doll, too young to understand why father is gone. A widow wears black, her mourning dress becoming a permanent second skin. The war consumes lives, but also years. Time itself bends under its weight. The Civil War was not simply armies clashing. It was a transformation of millions of lives. Every musket fired, every cannon roared, sent ripples outward, through homes, through farms, through the tender fabric of families. The human cost cannot be measured in numbers alone. It lingers in silence, in absence, in the echo of voices never heard again. The Civil War's story cannot be told without walking among the bloodlands, places where the earth itself remembers, where fields whisper of fire and smoke, and where rivers once ran red with human sacrifice. These were not mere battles. They were cataclysms. Moments when the nation's fate, balanced upon the edge of a bayonet. The year is 1862. Near Sharpsburg, Maryland. The Union and Confederate armies collide. Along the banks of Antietam Creek. The sun rises on September 17th. A day that will become the bloodiest single day in American history. Cannons thunder. Musket smoke chokes the air. Cornfields become charnel houses. Stalks are cut down not by the scythe, but by lead. The Dunker Church, a humble white building, becomes a beacon of horror. Its walls rattled by shellfire. Its grounds littered with the fallen. 12 hours of slaughter. Nearly 23,000 casualties. Bodies line the fences. Men stagger into fields. Bleeding, dazed. Seeking water. Only to collapse into silence. Antietam changes everything. It halts Lee's first invasion of the North. It gives Abraham Lincoln the moment he waits for. To issue the Emancipation Proclamation. Freedom. Now tethered to war. Blood. Now married to liberation. The summer of 1863. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. A quiet town soon swallowed by thunder. For 3 days. The fields echo with fury. On the first day, Confederates drive Union forces through the streets. On the second, the hills of Little Round Top become altars of desperate courage. On the third, pickets charge. Thousands march shoulder to shoulder. Across an open field, the Union guns roar. The line of gray disintegrates. It is as though the earth itself tears men apart. When it ends, the ground is carpeted with the fallen. Shoes, muskets, torn flags, and lifeless bodies scatter across the hillsides. Over 50,000 casualties in 3 days. The Confederacy's high tide. It will never surge so far north again. And months later, Lincoln will return. In a speech only a few minutes long, he will consecrate this ground, not only as a cemetery, but as a rebirth of the nation. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here. He declares. Yet the words echo still. While Gettysburg rages in the east, another storm brews in the west. Vicksburg, the Confederate stronghold upon the Mississippi. To hold it is to hold the river. To lose it is to lose the war's spine. Ulysses S. Grant tightens the noose. A siege begins. Caves are dug into hillsides. Families huddle underground, listening to shells crash above. Food dwindles. Rats become delicacies. Cornmeal gruel sustains the starving. July 4, 1863. The city surrenders. The Mississippi is Union's river now. The Confederacy is cut in two. The noose tightens further. The war enters its darkest phase. After each battle, silence settles. It is the silence of the dead. Burial crews dig shallow graves. Sometimes, too many. The bodies remain where they fell, their faces staring skyward. Rain and wind cover them with dust. Grass grows around their bones. The land itself becomes a cemetery. Photographers capture the carnage. For the first time, ordinary citizens in parlors and kitchens see war's true face. Unflinching, ghastly, undeniable. The Civil War becomes not only a national trauma, but a mirror held to humanity itself. The Confederacy begins to wither, not all at once, but slowly, painfully. Like a great oak tree struck by lightning. Still standing, but smoldering within. It is the year 1864. The war has raged for 3 long years. The South, once filled with confidence, now strains under hunger, loss, and despair. The Union blockade suffocates the southern coast. Harbors that once bustled with cotton and trade now lie silent. Ships rot in port. Families starve in farmsteads. Salt, once taken for granted, becomes precious. Bread is stretched thin with sawdust. Shoes wear to tatters. Women march in food riots, their voices rising against governments that can no longer feed them. The Confederacy bleeds not only on the battlefield, but in every kitchen, every street, every hungry child's eyes. Into this crumbling world comes fire. General William Tecumseh Sherman. His name will become legend, spoken with dread and awe. In the autumn of 1864, his army turned southward. From Atlanta to the sea. He does not merely fight. He destroys. Railroads torn apart. Ties heated and twisted. Known as Sherman's neckties. Barns ablaze. Fields of cotton, torched. Livestock driven away. The march is not only against soldiers, but against the very fabric of Southern life. It is war as a statement. The Confederacy will burn. The path he cuts leaves scars. Scars that echo into memory, that linger long after the flames fade. In Virginia, 2 titans circle each other. Ulysses S. Grant. Robert E. Lee. Grant fights with relentless pressure. He is no stranger to loss. But unlike others before him, he will not retreat. From the wilderness to Spotsylvania to Cold Harbor, the fields drink rivers of blood. Each time Lee strikes, Grant presses on. Each time Lee defends, Grant maneuvers again. The Confederacy's army shrinks. Supplies vanish. But still, Lee holds out. His men starving. His horses worn to bone. The war grinds into siege. Trenches stretch for miles. Mud, blood, and cold become the soldiers' companions. In Richmond, the Confederate capital trembles. Breadlines lengthen. Paper money loses value. Faith ebbs away. April, 1865. The walls collapse. Richmond burns. Jefferson Davis flees. The dream of the Confederacy is reduced to smoke and ash. And then, the end. April 9, 1865. A quiet courthouse in Appomattox, Virginia. Two men meet. Lee, dressed with dignity, his sword at his side. Grant, mud-spattered, plain. They speak softly. The terms are gentle. Men may return home. Officers may keep their sidearms, their horses. There will be no executions. No humiliation. The war ends not with vengeance, but with weary mercy. Outside, soldiers weep. Some cheer. Some stand silent, unable to fathom what has been endured, and what has been lost. In these twilight days, the Confederacy flickers out. It is not only an army that surrenders. It is an idea. An idea of a nation built on bondage. An idea of sovereignty built on division. An idea that believed it could endure. In defiance of the age. It dies here. But the scars remain. The war is over. The armies have disbanded. The fields are quiet once more. And yet, the echoes remain. The cannons may be silent, but the questions linger. Why did it happen? Why did the American Civil War truly unfold? The answer that rises most clearly is slavery. Not merely as an institution of labor. Not simply as an economic system. But as the very heart of power. The marrow of Southern identity. The question that could no longer be delayed or denied. The Union fractured. Because one half of the nation clung to human bondage as its lifeblood, while the other half could no longer abide its expansion. Slavery was not the only issue, but it was the central one. All other grievances, all other debates, orbited around it like moons, around a burning star. And yet, beneath that, other forces churned. The South feared the loss of its place. A way of life. A hierarchy of power. A myth of honor. The North feared disunion. A republic collapsing into fragments. Its grand experiment exposed as fragile. Perhaps doomed. Economics, culture, philosophy, pride. All intertwined. Each tugging. Each knotting together. Into a rope that finally snapped. Why do men choose war? Why do nations embrace death rather than compromise? Some say it is pride. Some say it is fear. Some say it is destiny. Perhaps it is all of these. Perhaps it is none. History does not yield simple truths. It offers only fragments. Whispers. Ghosts. What we do know is this. The war claimed over 600,000 lives. Brothers fought brothers. Fathers buried sons. Cities smoldered. Fields lay empty. And yet, from that ocean of blood, a new nation emerged. The Union, preserved. Slavery, abolished. But the cost? Immeasurable. Freedom gained. Yet scars unhealed. A promise written. Yet not fully kept. The shadows of that war still stretch across the present. Still, they shape the way America dreams, and fears, and remembers. So why did it really happen? Because nations are made not only of laws, but of contradictions. Because compromise cannot last forever when it collides with morality. Because in the end, a house divided truly cannot stand. And so it fell to war, to fire, to blood. The American Civil War happened because it had to. Because no other path remained. And now, the voices fade. The battlefield lies quiet. The smoke has drifted away. The dead rest in their graves. But listen closely, and you can still hear them. The faint sound of drums. The whisper of torn flags. The hush of history, forever asking, why?